Welcome to the fifth in a continuing series of videos about Moglice low-friction slideway material. Moglice is distributed by Devitt Machinery Company, who has produced this video. As you may know, Moglice is moldable, and this is the key to its application advantages. With Moglice, final alignments are made on jack screws or temporary shims. This can make life much easier for scraping hands. Moglice comes in several different consistencies, including a new thin putty form called Moglice 628. Putty Hard is still the most common material though, so we'll start by describing a Putty Hard application done at Philadelphia Gear Corporation. Philadelphia Gear has been using Moglice since 1978. This is the bottom of an old Blanchard rotary table. There are 7 pre-cured pads of Moglice superglued to the adhesion surface. 3 pieces would have been sufficient. The table is set on a surface plate and the top is checked for parallelism. The high pads are adjusted with a hand scraper till all make contact and the top is parallel. The Moglice putty is then mixed in a drill press. It is pulled out on a flat surface to work out any air or unmixed lumps. A thin coat is pressed into the roughened adhesion surface. The balance of the Moglice is then applied so that it is higher in the center. This avoids air entrapment when setting it down on the plate. The table is then set on the specially prepared surface plate and its parallelism checked. The next day, the table is tapped free and the excess Moglice is trimmed off. The resulting surface is finished, requiring no machining or scraping. This job was done in 1983 by Howard Hackelton, master mechanic at Philadelphia Gear. In 1989, I had the opportunity to interview Howard, and I asked him about that table. We're here at Philadelphia Gear with Howard Hackelton, master mechanic here since 1953. Howard's quite familiar with Moglice. In fact, he Mogliced the application you just saw reviewed. How has that been working, Howard?
That machine has been working very well. We've been running that approximately about 6.5 years. About 4 months ago, we took it apart because we had some other problems with it. And we had some dirt scratches. Outside that, the Moglice is fine. Shows no wear hardly at all.
You've used Moglice in other applications, haven't you?
Yes, we use it a lot of times. We use it on our turret lathes. We use it on our Fowler gear hoppers. We had a sheath tailstock, very heavy. We put Moglice on that. And we also did that 96-inch Blanchard that you were talking about.
Any service problems?
No, none whatsoever. It's been great.
I understand you worked with the DeVlieg field service personnel while they were in working on your DeVlieg.
Oh yes, I helped them do the table. They did the table and they also did the tailstock. And that machine runs 7 days a week. That's one of our very important machines. And it has a lot of weight, and at this moment it's still running and there has been no complaints or any problems with it.
Good, good. I remember a nut we worked on. I guess that was for a Sellers horizontal boring mill. It brings a smile to your face. Huh?
That old nut was a toughie. Now that nut there was about a 4-inch nut that had a double half-inch pitch lead. And that nut was assembled from our mechanics, and they filled the wrong reservoir up with oil. And that ran for a good 14 months without oil. And that was pulling approximately 35 tons.
It was moving the whole column.
Moving the whole column. It finally broke up, and it wasn't the fault of Moglice. We did re-Moglice that. That machine now is still running in Japan.
Huh. What do you know? I see you've got a project on the table here. You must still be using Moglice.
Oh, that's Moglice saves my time. It makes it much easier for me. Years ago, we used to have to take that. We used to have to cut bronze, machine bolt bronze underneath of it. We have to machine the bronze. We have to hand scrape it. Today, I just use Moglice, no scraping, only the oil mark. It makes my job 100% easier, especially when you're getting old.
Thanks a lot, Howard. I appreciate it. My thanks to Philadelphia Gear and to Howard for allowing that interview. Getting back to Putty Hard, we're going to quickly review some Putty Hard application techniques before introducing Moglice 628. Here, Moglice putty is being mixed with a putty knife on a piece of sheet metal. The Moglice is then troweled onto the adhesion surface, in this case, a Pratt & Whitney jig bore saddle. The saddle is then set down on the finished bedways, coming to rest on preset shims, which establish the correct alignment. The next day, the saddle is removed from the bedways and the excess Moglice is trimmed off. This procedure results in a correctly aligned saddle that has good bearing contact on all four ways. This wheelhead slide from a Landis roll grinder has just had Moglice putty troweled onto its adhesion surface. It is then set onto its mating ways, alignments are verified, and it is left to cure. The next day it is detached and trimmed as a finished slide. This Devleague saddle is masked and sprayed with release agent. The way surfaces on the platen are coated with Moglice putty. The platen is then set on the saddle and its alignment verified. This is the platen directly after detaching it from the saddle. After trimming the platen, red lead is spread on the saddle. The platen is rubbed on the saddle and a high percentage of bearing contact is evident. The Moglice has not been machined or scraped in any way. The Moglice has replicated the accurately scraped saddle ways. This Cincinnati Hydrotel will have its headstock molded in position with Moglice putty. 6 holes in the headstock are drilled and tapped to receive these set screws. It took about 30 minutes to align the headstock with these screws. Moglice was then troweled onto the back of the headstock. The headstock was molded against the guideways, and the next day the ways were finished, requiring no machining and no scraping. The upright for this Brown & Sharp grinder will be molded to its bedways so that it stands perpendicular to the top of the table. The Moglice putty material is troweled onto the bottom of the upright. The upright is set on the base and the alignment checked. The next day, the Moglice is a replication of the bedways. The V-way and the flat before trimming and after trimming. It is also common to produce ways on epoxy granite bases with Moglice. At Elb grinders, Moglice putty is troweled onto a polymer concrete base, and a master fixture is used to replicate finished bedways directly onto the polymer concrete. Moglice does not have to be applied to the adhesion surface. Notice that here, Putty Hard has been applied to the bedway. The saddle is then set over the Moglice. After cure, the Moglice will adhere to the clean, rough adhesion surface and release from the bedway, which has been treated with release agent. This is especially useful when the part is difficult or time-consuming to flip. Putty Hard is commonly used on retainer ways or straps. The putty is applied to the strap and the strap is bolted in place. After cure, the straps fit line to line. 1 or 2 scrape cuts on the surface will produce the desired clearance. Putty Hard is also ideal for gibs. When molding gibs in place, Putty Hard is stiff enough it will actually hold a gib flat against its back. The fact that Putty Hard is so stiff can at times be a disadvantage. For example, a floor mill saddle may have 35 psi weight loading with the column on. Without the column, the weight loading may be only 3 or 4 psi, and this may not be enough to displace the excess Putty Hard. For this reason, Moglice 628 is being introduced. 628 is a thin putty which is easily displaced but will not run off a horizontal way like a fluid would. With 628, as with all other types of Moglice, the molding surface, in this case the bedways, are verified flat and level. The adhesion surface is made rough and clean. The bedways are sprayed with release agent, and in this case, wax strip has been applied to mold in the oil grooves. 12 500-gram kits of 628 were mixed and applied in about 20 minutes by 3 men. The kits were mixed in their own containers, and the 628 poured and troweled onto the bedways. The 628 is thin enough that it is easily spread on the ways, but still thick enough to crown in the center. The saddle is set on the bedways over the Moglice, and the final alignment is achieved on jack screws. When the saddle is removed, the excess Moglice is trimmed off and the Moglice is stoned with oil. The saddle does not require any further machining or scraping. After checking the oil system, the saddle is ready to reassemble. Note the oil grooves neatly molded in. In another 628 application, the table for a large Betz vertical boring machine will be fit to the bedways. The original phenolic wear plates were a 1/4 inch thick. They were removed and replaced with phenolic 3/16 of an inch thick. This leaves 1/16 for Moglice thickness, or about 62 thousandths. The oil groove material is laid out on the bedway. They are then masked and sprayed with release agent. Once again, one of the advantages of 628 is that it is easy to mix a large amount quickly. The 628 is mixed in its own containers and poured on the ways. It is then troweled out evenly and crowned to the center. The Moglice was mixed and applied in less than 30 minutes, and the table was then set into the Moglice. The weight of the table easily displaced the excess 628, and the table came to rest on its alignment shims in less than 1 minute. After curing, the table is removed and the excess Moglice is trimmed off. The surface was spotted for oil retention. The table was then ready for reassembly with its new Moglice low-friction wayliner. Moglice 628 was developed about 10 years ago, specifically for Elbe grinders of West Germany. A 10-year application history in new machine tool construction makes 628 a proven formulation. 628 is new in the United States, though, and we think it gives Moglice users new flexibility. Another rather recent development in application techniques is the pour-and-set application method using Moglice FLP. The pour-and-set method again eliminates the injection process and makes Moglice easier and faster to use. Planer and grinder tables are excellent candidates for the pour-and-set application method. The bedways of this planer were masked off and sprayed with release agent. The old phenolic on the table was ground with a hand grinder to open up the cloth and to provide mechanical lock. Moglice will stick to phenolic like crazy. For large pour-and-sets, Devitt Machinery can provide the FLP in specially sized kits ready to mix and pour. One man can mix 30 500-gram kits in 5 minutes. The FLP is poured into the prepared bedways.